College football fans, what up? It's the one and only Thompson here, and you clicked on the thumbnail, so you know what type of danger we're getting into today. Let's go break down my way too early 2024 college football playoff bracket. And if you're new here, well, welcome on into the channel, people. Make sure that you like the video, hit the ring notification, that way you don't miss a single episode of just saying it. And of course, hit subscribe, because we're talking college football every single day leading up to week 1 and well throughout the 2024 season. Make sure that you tell your friends, family, mortal enemies, best of bros, college football aficionados, and people that just love sports anywhere about this channel, because we're on the race to become the #1 YouTube show talking about our favorite sport, but also the #1 college football community on YouTube. And the latter, way more important than the former. Make sure you're following me on all the socials at Mr. Cole Thompson. It's the exact same as my YouTube handle. So when you click subscribe here, just literally go over to Twitter, Facebook, X, whatever it is, and hit follow there. And if you want a question read live on air, go ahead and email me at colethompsonwriting@gmail.com or slide in the DMs at Mr. Cole Thompson on Twitter. Way too early college football playoff bracket. Guys, this is going to change multiple times. I'm going to have differing opinions from here until week 1. This is not finalized. What is finalized is that we have a dozen teams fighting to the finish. One team has to come from every conference, including one group of 5 winner. There is a prerequisite that you got to know going into this. Standings and seedings are two drastically different things. One team could actually end up being one of the worst of the 12, but because they won their division, they won their conference, they're a top 4 seed. So seeding, rankings, two completely different things. Don't lean that much into it. Real fast, just missed the cut for me. Kansas State. Look, I am so excited about what this offense can look like. I am humming like a hummingbird. There going to be so much joy seeing what could be the wishbone back in action. Dylan Edwards, DJ Giddings, Avery Johnson. There is a lot to like about what you're getting with Chris Kleiman in the Little Apple. I just don't think they're going to get 2 teams in from the Big 12 this year. So unfortunately, they're on the outside looking in. LSU, I see the exact same thing as last year. High-tempo offense that's going to score a lot of points, but they're going to have to win in blowout fashion. And I just think there's going to be a few games where the offenses are going to be able to counteract at the same level as them to where they're going to be on the outside looking in. Michigan, I love their defense. They have one of the best defensive lines in all of college football, headlined by potential #1 overall pick Mason Graham. They have one of the best cornerbacks in college football, one of the best running backs in Donovan Edwards that actually gets to be RB1. But this does feel like the one year where they are going to be not pretenders, but just not at the same level as the other 3 from the Big Ten. Spoiler alert, there's 3 from the Big Ten. And FSU, kind of the same thing I said about Kansas State. One game, in my opinion, will decide if the Seminoles or X team gets in. And it's not, in my opinion, going to be the ACC championship game. Regardless, the winner of that matchup is going to the postseason, and you get to hear about it in October. Let's go. #1, Georgia. They win the SEC. I think they drop one game. I think at some point they're going to drop a game, whether it be to Alabama, whether it be to Texas in October, in Austin, whether it be to Ole Miss on the road in Oxford. They're going to drop a game, but they're going to win the SEC. And until further notice, the SEC reigns supreme. It is the king of all of college football. It is the czar that keeps everything moving. They feel like the most complete roster in the sport, headlined by a Heisman caliber quarterback in Carson Beck. They have the #1 coach in Kirby Smart. And it feels like after what they've done the last 4 years, finding their way to the #1 rankings, back-to-back national championships, repleted their entire roster overnight. If they win the SEC, they will get the cadence of the #1 spot. Maybe another team besides Alabama would be put at #2. But right now, because of where Georgia is, who Georgia is, and how they've garnered the respect, they go ahead and get the top spot. #2, Ohio State. I love this Ohio State defense. Honestly, the thing that terrifies me is that they were already a top 5 unit last year, and they returned so much talent. But then, just like whenever you go to an ice cream shop and you get a banana split, you always wait for the cherry on top. That cherry is by the name of Caleb Downs. And Downs is, in my opinion, the most irreplaceable player in all of college football. Tuscaloosa is going to have a tough time finding a safety that can match his criteria, and you didn't even need him in Columbus. But you know what? Jim Knowles said, we don't really care. The offense scares me because if I don't know who is going to be quarterback, I do think that Will Howard is an upgrade over what you had in Kyle McCord. But I also know that there are question marks when it comes to what if he isn't the guy. This is why I also think they are a one-loss team. Doesn't mean that they will lose to Oregon. Doesn't mean that they won't lose to Penn State, but they end up winning in Indianapolis. They feel like the second most complete team in college football. They're probably the precedent, and they're going to, of course, as the Big Ten winner, be the number 2 seed. 3, Utah. I think Utah drops 2 games, but they are the conference winner. This is, in my opinion, the pinnacle of the Big 12 moving forward. Somebody's got to take over as the face of the conference. Somebody has got to prove that they are going to be what ends up taking over for Oklahoma and Texas. And right now, death, taxes, Kyle Whittingham competing for a conference championship, it literally just flows. He is Thanos. It is inevitable. And the crazy part is this is the most underappreciated team in college football for the last 2 decades. You know who doesn't care? Kyle Whittingham. You know who doesn't care? The Utes. You know who loves playing the underdog role? Everyone in Salt Lake City. Rice-Eccles Stadium is not only a pinnacle of college football folklore, but it is a majesty and about ready to become the face of the Big 12 of hostile environments. We know what happens when you take the field with Brayton Kuthi. We know what happens when you take the field with Cam Rising. I love the addition of Dorian Singer. They're always going to be competitive on defense. They're the most physical team in college football that nobody wants to bring up, and they're consistent as all hell. I think that they drop 2 games. I'm guaranteeing that they are probably right now going to lose to UCF because of, again, it's the Gus Malzahn special. But don't tell me for 1 second that you do not believe that this team can't be the face of the Big 12. We know what happens when you get quality play. We know this is a veteran roster. Right now, in my opinion, they should be the favorites to win the Big 12. And last but not least, it's Miami. If I am going to say Miami is going to be the Texas of 2024, I have to put them in a top 4 seed. They may drop 2 games. They may drop 1 game. I'm not sure right now. But what I can tell you is this team did everything possible to mitigate their flaws in the second wave of the portal. You had a quarterback that you want to add in. Well, guess what? Now you got a best friend in the backfield in Damian Martinez. This is a north to south runner that I think is a perfect fit for what Shannon Dawson and this offense wants to do. Not to mention you bring over Samuel Brown, who has a relationship with him from his time in Houston. You also bring over 2 great defensive players. Simeon Barrow, who I think, even though it was a lot of money to go ahead and acquire him, if this is what's going to get you to the postseason, you go ahead and pay it. Love the addition of Jalen Ackerman as well, the leading tackler from Louisville. You got to get to Florida State. Once you get to Florida State, you can coast all the way to Charlotte. The winner of that game is going to be the 4 seed. In October, you know this is a good matchup. It's at Hard Rock. So here's the good news. You get the home field advantage. Coral Gables, South Florida. If you are a Hurricane fan, you have got to pack that stadium. You have got to make it feel exactly like it is in Tallahassee because you need to have the advantage. You win this one, in my opinion, it's a done deal. You're set, secure, you're going to the postseason. Congratulations. Mario Cristobal did it right. Laid down a foundation for the first 2 years, built a repertoire, had a stable offensive line, had a stable defensive line, and lo and behold, now you're going to the postseason. Oregon, they're my 5 seed. I think if they lose 2 games on the year, one is going to be to Ohio State, and the other is going to be to Ohio State. Those are the only 2 I think that they drop. And so because of that, I think that they are going to have to be the highest seed. Because again, last season, we talked about Oregon. They only lose 2 games by 6 combined points to the same team. 3 plays determine which winner of the Pac-12 would have potentially been in the national championship. You get an upgrade at quarterback in terms of veteranship with Dylan Gabriel over Dante Moore. If you got to turn to Dante Moore because of injury, you're in good hands. It's like All-State. I love the addition of what you're bringing in with Evan Stewart just to basically say, Will Stein's offense? Yeah, we knew it worked last year. We're going to double down and do it again. It's again, Phil Connors, Groundhog Day 2.0. You filled up the defense, man. Like, I don't know many people that walk away with Derek Harmon and then say, oh, by the way, we're really good at also edge rusher. Every offensive line is going to have fits in the Big Ten. And I've said this, they're a Frankenstein monster, this Oregon team. And they have been. People are saying, well, it's going to take time to translate to the next conference. Not for Oregon. Not for Oregon, because you want to know why? They're built for the Big Ten in the areas where it matters most. And outside of really 2 major games, you don't have a lot of question marks. This is a team that feels the most complete in the Big Ten outside of Ohio State. It would have shocked me if they actually beat Ohio State and they claimed the top spot. They're good enough to get there. I think right now they're the 3rd best team in college football, but 4 winners, you got to put them ahead. Oregon, to me, they get the 5th spot. Next up, runner-up in the SEC. I'm calling my shot. I think it's Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss has one of the easiest schedules that we are not talking enough about. I feel like their roster is complete. I feel like that they've done everything possible to make sure that they feel good. They're going into year 3 with Jackson Dart. This is a year where you're sitting to yourself and saying, okay, you've mastered the offense. Now, how do you heighten your persona? I think he could be a Heisman candidate. I really do. One thing you know about Heisman Trophy winners, they have a great supporting cast around. There are not many teams that have better supporting cast than the one in Oxford. Jordan Watkins, Trey Harris, a Biletnikoff potential finalist, Juice Wells, when he's on the field, he can be a 1,000-yard receiver. Running back by committee, who gives a damn? Yeah, you lose Quinshon Judkins, but you feel good about the rest of this offense. And really, there's 2 games that I worry about. Oklahoma and Georgia. Both those games are at home. If you drop one, you drop one. I think this team ends up going 11-2 because they go 11-2. They make it to Atlanta for the first time in what feels like ever, mainly because it is. And now they're going to go ahead and be the 6th seed. 7, Texas. Texas, in my opinion, is going to drop 2 games. I don't know where. And because if they drop 2 games and Oklahoma, and then maybe to Oklahoma, and maybe Oklahoma loses to Ole Miss, they end up getting the nod to Ole Miss. They're a 10-win team. They're going to be. You know they are. They feel like they have just doubled down and said, you know what? We don't care that we're newcomers. We're going to mean business. They've revamped their defensive line, which is a huge blessing because that honestly was the reason they won the Big 12 last year. They still have a great rushing attack. They add in brand new receivers. Yeah, it's going to take some adjustment for Quinn Ewers to get used to throwing to them, but they're really talented playmakers and they got speed. And speed kills, and that's exactly what you hear about with Steve Sarkisian. All gas, no what? No break. And there's not going to be a break for anybody that has to face off against this Texas team. They got great depth. They have a great schedule. They have a great roster. And there's not many question marks. The game that you worry about is against Georgia. And if you lose to Georgia, and let's just say Ole Miss beats Georgia, there you go. That's your answer. So I think Texas is the playoff team. I just don't believe right now when you look at where the questions are, until you see the roster fully mesh, there are going to be some concerns. But they're still going to the postseason. I don't think you have to worry about that. Next up, Missouri. Missouri has the easiest schedule in the SEC. It's comical. It really is. The Oklahoma game is going to have some animosity because of the rivalry for the Big 12. You're going to have some question marks when it comes to playing Alabama. Maybe Texas A&M with that defensive front gives you fits. But if you go 10-2 and you look at how this team looks, especially with what you're returning offensively, Brady Cook, Luther Burden, who probably should be the favorite to right now win the Biletnikoff, Theo Weiss, who honestly, can we talk about Theo Weiss for a second? Really good number 2 receiver. Sometimes in life, you always just need to have that secondary character. Like, you know, when you go to a movie and you see that one standout secondary role and he wins the supporting cast Oscar, yeah, that's Theo Weiss for you. Defensively, it's a concern because if you did lose Blake Baker, no more Darius Robinson, no more Ennis Rakestraw, no more Chris no more Chris Drain, but you still feel pretty good about where you are in the trenches. You did bring in a couple of players at linebacker, at safety. I'm not as concerned as many others. I think Corey Batoon learning underneath Kane Womack is going to get a little bit of a blessing. And I do look at this offense, and I think that they're going to score at least 35 points per game. They're going to average somewhere in the top half of the SEC, which are going to 10-2. 10-2 gets you to the playoff. Maybe they're 11-1, but because they have a weaker schedule, they just fall behind Texas. Number 9, Penn State. Here's the deal. You got to be it if it's Penn State. This is the year. You've been planning on this for 3 seasons. You've been looking for this since you signed Drew Aller, since you signed Abdul Carter, since you signed Nick Singleton, since you signed Katron Allen. You thought you had it last year. You brought back Olu Fashanu. He isn't around for it. Unfortunately, you're going to have a new offensive line. You got to find a number 1 receiver. You have to find a number 1 receiver. That's just the bottom line, people. If they cannot throw the football, they cannot be multidimensional, they're going to be paddling up creek with literally styrofoam pads. That's what it is. But their schedule's manageable. You don't play Michigan. You do play Ohio State. You do play Oregon. You feel like that you're still a 2-loss team. But unlike in years past, 2 losses does not take you out of the postseason picture. You have the quarterback. I do love the addition of both Andy Kolenicki and Tom Allen. You got to appreciate what you have with this with James Franklin when it comes to defense. Like every year, it's wash, rinse, repeat. It's Groundhog's Day. It literally is. You don't care who your coordinator is. It's like the alarm clock breaking in the middle of the scene. Whatever. So be it. You feel good about who is running the defense. Your schedule's manageable. You should be a playoff team. There literally is no excuse. And again, sometimes you'll see these weird things happen where a coach will be let go because of they're just not meeting expectations. You see it in the in the NBA all the time. Maybe this is a year where you're starting to feel a little bit of the pressure if you change Franklin. Like you have to get over that hump. 10, Notre Dame. I think if Notre Dame is a 2-loss team, they will always benefit. They're never going to be getting a bye. They're never going to get a bye. They're always going to be in play to host a playoff game. I think that when you look at their schedule right now, they're going to go 10-2. If you go 10-2 in your Notre Dame and you look at what is brought in, you look at how this offense can be revamped, can still have that mental ground and pound, road mauler, grab your lunch pail and go to work type of mentality. But then you add in a little bit of firepower. You add in just a little bit of firecrackers, like you're bored at work and you're shooting Roman candles at gasoline tanks. Like, if you do that, that could be what Mike Denbrock is. I like the addition of Riley Leonard. I think that it's, again, proving the concept that veteranship at the most quintessential position is dire. I love that you brought back Xavier Watts. I love that you have still the head coach of Marcus Freeman learning on the job, but kind of feeling more confident in himself. I think that he is ready to take that next jump where it's no longer this 9-win, 10-win regular season. We're actually good enough to go ahead and compete. And again, it's Notre Dame. They're going to put butts in seats. They're going to put eyeballs on the television screens because the people will root against Notre Dame to show that they're not ready. They're not a playoff material team. And so simply because of that, you're going to have them involved. But again, Notre Dame, if you go 10-2, it feels like that this is a moment where the College Football Playoff Committee is going to decide how they view the Irish moving forward. 11, Alabama. I feel very tricky with this one because Alabama could easily go 9-3, and then you have to have that conversation about what do we do with the SEC. Because this is a really easy concept if it's Missouri. It's really easy if like Kentucky is the 5th team. It's really easy to have these arguments when there are rosters that maybe don't carry the same amount of weight. But when it is that team, when it is that roster that is always playoff bound, when you have a coach like Kalen DeBoer, and again, you're replacing Nick Saban. Like Kalen DeBoer would be an upgrade over every other coach other than the 6-time national champion and probably Kirby Smart. And that's the list. That's the list right now in college football, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we got. If you can get Kalen DeBoer to have the same type of up-tempo, ground and pound, physicality with a little bit of flair, a little bit of pizzazz, kind of like Notre Dame, you would be in a great spot to go 10-2, maybe 9-3. And it just feels like the College Football Playoff Committee, because of who is now the head coach, because of what we've seen in the past, because of its Alabama, that script day still carries a lot of weight. They're an SEC school. They would get in. I would feel a little bit differently if you switched them in Missouri. And Missouri was the 11th seed, but right now I got to give it to them. And 12, I'm going to go with Tulane. I think Tulane is in a really intriguing spot because yes, they lose their head coach, but they might have upgraded. Like honestly, John Summerall was my pick to be the head coach at Mississippi State. I thought that you need to go back to that defensive, physical approach that you had for years under Dan Mullen. I get it. Dan Mullen was an offensive coach. You don't need to remind me of that, people. But do you remember how great their defense was every single year, especially in the trenches? Well, that was Troy. And so now you lose a guy in Willie Fritz that came back, wanted to be a part of something special, nearly got you right back to the AAC champion, right back to a New Year's Six bowl game. And unfortunately, now he goes to Houston and you kind of upgrade. I like what you brought in. You get Ty Thompson. You have a couple of new wide receivers. You feel good about your secondary. This is a very good Green Wave team that can roll throughout the AAC. And the crazy part is they have such a unique schedule where they get to play 2 Power 4 opponents. Let's just say they upset one. Is that not the best group of 4, group of 5, or whatever the hell you want to call it win? Like, is that not the best version of the school? Is that not what you want from a playoff team? So I think that when you look at right now what the Green Wave are doing, they're really well built. And John Summerall, he took over a program that many people thought, oh, it's going to take at least a year to rebuild. He won the Sun Belt in year 1 and then did it again and doubled down and said, yeah, I'm worthy of being a Power 4 head coach. Yeah, you are. And now you get to be at probably the best group of 5 school out there. And so further notice, I'm going to go ahead and run with Tulane. Those are my top 12 teams going into the year. It would be Oregon playing against Tulane. Ole Miss playing against Alabama, Texas hosting Notre Dame. God, that circle it on calendars, grab your popcorn, put the kids and children to bed, make sure that you are prepared for what will be a bloodbath battle between these two. And of course, Missouri versus Penn State, two tier 2 schools that want to prove that they actually belong in tier 1. But let me know in the comment section down below. Who did I miss on? Who am I too high on? Do you feel like this is a good balance for the college football playoff? Make sure you like, hit subscribe, tell your friends, your family, mortal enemies, best of bros, college football aficionados everywhere about this channel. And until next time, folks, I am Cole Thompson. In the great words of Mr. Tom Petty, take it easy.